He first voted to dismiss Article 3 and then later voted to acquit Judge Nixon because it was redundant, complex, and confusing. 33 senators joined Senator Dole in voting to dismiss the article, and a total of 40 vote to acquit when it came to a judgment of guilt or innocence. Senators Cole, Biden, and Murkowski each spoke about the danger posed by this formulation. And I'll look once more to Senator Cole. This wording presents a variety of problems. First of all, it means that Judge Nixon can be convicted even if 2/3 of the Senate does not agree in which his political statements were false. The House is telling us that it's okay to convict Judge Nixon on Article 3, even if we have different visions of what he did wrong. But that's not fair to Judge Nixon, to the Senate, or to the American people. Those senators were not acting in derogation of the Senate rules or precedents. They were acting in the spirit of fairness to the accused and in the very best tradition of American due process.
The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. Chief Justice, I believe that the council has indicated they're willing to take a break at this point. Therefore, I'd ask unanimous consent that we take a brief 15-minute recess in the proceedings.
Without objection, it's so ordered.
And the break, as scheduled, about an hour after the session began, with Chuck Ruff, the White House counsel, making
I hook it on my...
a rather academic and legal argument as to why this case should not have reached the point that it has reached so far. He says the House has rushed to judgment, that William Jefferson Clinton is not guilty of the charges proffered against him. He did not commit perjury. He did not obstruct justice. He should not be removed from office. A number of other points he's made here as well, that perjury is not enough to push this to this point, that the model for impeaching and removing judges is imperfect when comparing to the standard for removing the president, that the standard of evidence should be beyond a reasonable doubt, the standard of evidence that the senators each are capable of bringing in their own way to this process should be of the highest level. To Jeff Greenfield, we've been listening to this now for some time. Not a great deal of ground paved here, new ground, not a taking on of the facts just yet, but an important prelude to presumably where Ruff is going.
Yeah, depending on your point of view, I think you could either call this throat clearing or an essential laying of a foundation, because basically he's going immediately and saying, look, the House managers bollocked this case up at the most fundamental level. They didn't understand what impeachment really meant. They didn't understand what level of wrong had to be done. And he's just now getting to the argument they don't even present a coherent case to the Senate because they bunched up a bunch of charges together, and that's a danger. So somebody looking for a kind of great, one of those theatrical lawyer summations, the kind you get on LA Law, is going to be sorely disappointed, but it ought to be understood that he had to do this.
Had to do this. And he acknowledged, actually, what this was all about at the outset, when he basically acknowledged that he is not the orator that the House members were. That is not his job. He is here to defend the president. Very serious business. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Around here, you can't buy a reputation for quality. You have to earn it, the way Wall did. Wall invented the first electric clipper 80 years ago, right here in America's heartland. And they're still the choice of millions of professionals worldwide. Today, you can get that same quality and reliability at home with Wall clippers, trimmers, and shavers, all backed by the Wall family commitment to innovation and value. That's what being a leader is all about. Wall, bringing professional quality home.
Right now, Senior Quote can help you get up to $100,000 of affordable life insurance with no medical exam. For example, a $10,000 policy for a 60-year-old male in good health is only about 83 cents a day. A $25,000 policy for a 50-year-old male in good health is as little as $1 a day. Women's rates are even lower. An application is required, but there is no medical exam. Call Senior Quote now. For more information and a free quote, call 1-800-815-6977.
Tonight on Larry King Live, we're live right after the State of the Union speech. Senator John Bro's with us, so is Bob Woodward and more, only on CNN.
There's things that local cable provided, the local news, that I just couldn't get on satellite.
I don't like the dish because I can't get local. Then we don't have the local channels.
No local channels.
We were both born and raised here, and we like to be involved with our local community and know what's happening. And with satellite, we sort of got away from that local connection.
Falcon Cable, your access to entertainment, information, and beyond.
Here's Edward Asner.
Our community is troubled. You feel the effects of crime and poverty. You support the idea of making a community better through work, not welfare. You believe that jobs reduce poverty and homelessness. We believe it too. We're Goodwill Industries. We train people with disabilities and those with other barriers to employment. Like you, Goodwill Industries believes in the power of work.
The Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs, weeknight 6:30 Eastern on CNN.
And tonight, you'll notice in the next turn that this peculiar day takes, where the president will come over to the Congress and deliver his State of the Union address. Our coverage will begin at 8 o'clock with a one-hour special, which will wrap this day of trial and look ahead to the president's State of the Union address. The address itself starts at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Now, as to where we stand at this moment, a fairly blunt recitation, if you parse the words of Chuck Ruff, the White House counsel, as to what is taking place here. It is a dry recitation, somewhat academic, but he says, and I'm quoting here, "What you have before you is nothing more than a rush to judgment." That by way of accusing the House Judiciary Committee, and in fact the House of Representatives, as Jeff Greenfield mentioned a moment ago, of basically botching the job. Candy Crowley on Capitol Hill.
Frank, I think basically we heard what has been the White House defense throughout most of this. First of all, that he didn't do what they say he did, and even if he did, it doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. We got some more historical precedents for that. An explanation of why they throw out federal judges for perjury, but that this should not apply to the president. And then we got, as you said, all of the other arguments about, the House botching the job and not being specific about the charges. So one has to assume that this is the overview and that the particulars that the White House is promising are coming somewhat later in the day.
Indeed, one of the things that he said, and I want to turn to Roger Cossack, our legal analyst, or one of our legal analysts, about this one. Roger, Chuck Ruff says the House rushed to judgment. They made a terrible mistake by not calling witnesses, and so what should you do? You should stop it. Now, if the House rushed to judgment by not calling witnesses, wouldn't the logical implication be you guys got to hear some of these witnesses to resolve the factual problems?
Well, that certainly is an implication that you can take. What I think is that what Chuck Ruff is saying is that, look, you have this record, though, that is more than complete because you have the grand jury witnesses, and you don't need anything more than that. And perhaps in what I think he was saying is that the House should have had more witnesses, and if they would have had more witnesses, perhaps this wouldn't have been the rush to judgment. By the way, I must say that rush to judgment seems to be a popular phrase in trials of the century. The last one I covered, the last trial of the century I covered, rush to judgment was a very popular phrase.
Can I rush over to Michael Gerhardt for just a minute and get you involved in this? Michael, one of the key points is what Ruff refers to as constitutional deficiency. He says this has been handled poorly up to this point, it doesn't have standing effectively, and it shouldn't proceed. What points is he making?
Well, I think he's trying to introduce a number of themes I'm sure that subsequent speakers will develop. I think he's trying to point to the fact that the articles, I think, are drafted in such a way that they're very difficult to defend against. They're not very clear, they're vague, you can sort of read a lot of different things out of them. Moreover, there's sort of multiple offenses sometimes combined within a single article, which produces a kind of bizarre possibility, which is that you can get a number of people, perhaps even two-thirds of the Senate, voting in favor of a single article, even though the two-thirds of the senators who voted for it don't agree on why they voted for it.
Precedent counts. He's pointing to the judges. These senators who are so gathered, many of them have voted on previous impeachments. Now, what he's saying is you cannot judge a president by the same standard you judge a judge.
That's right. I think a couple of other themes that he's mentioned. First, as you just suggested, the difference in the standards for impeaching a president from a judge. That judges, because of their peculiar duties and the fact that they serve for life, are, as he put it, held to a higher standard. Their integrity really is at the core of their function. Moreover, presidents have different duties and are elected by the people, thus public opinion can be relevant there.
And Frank, I just want to pick up and just say one thing. He's also saying something which I think is a very strong argument, and that's the argument of proportionality, saying, look, you cannot judge perjury, that lying about a private sexual matter, the same way you would as if it was lying about something, giving away state secrets.
Wolf Blitzer at the White House, you've heard much of this before.
Most of it we did hear before in various forums. The White House, though, clearly was struck by the Republican managers' arguments that you shouldn't necessarily judge a presidential impeachment trial differently than an impeachment trial affecting a federal judge. That's why we heard the extensive legal commentary by Chuck Ruff on this very specific issue. And what I was struck with was that Chuck Ruff is really addressing 100 senators, most of whom are lawyers. The arguments he's making might seem a little bit dry, might seem a little bit academic, but from a legal point of view, he is anxious to score some points, raise some questions among these lawyers of the senators that perhaps there isn't enough here to go forward and convict the president.
And where does he go from here?
He's going to get into, eventually, the White House legal team, into an extensive discussion of the facts of the case. They're trying to do in this initial overview some of the legal arguments, the rush to judgment, as we've all been talking about. But there will be some extensive debate, some extensive discussion of the facts. And Chuck Ruff, we're also told, will presumably answer some of the specific suggestions made by the managers directed at him, that throwing back some of his own comments to the House Judiciary Committee, to the House of Representatives, and he's going to take issue with some of those specific comments.
They're in a break up on Capitol Hill. We're going to take a quick one ourselves. We'll be right back.
Suppose you could save hundreds of dollars a month. Suppose you could cut your monthly debt payments in half. Suppose you could get out from under high-rate credit card stress. If you're a homeowner, First Plus makes it easy with the First Plus Financial Get-Ahead Loan. First Plus is different. You could qualify for up to 50% more than with other lenders, even if you have little or no equity in your home. There's no fee to apply, and the interest may even be tax-deductible. Call your First Plus Financial Loan Officer today. Call 1-800-229-1452. Find out how much you may qualify for before you hang up, and you could have your money in just a few weeks. Call 1-800-229-1452. At First Plus, we're working first for you.
With a home loan from Superior Bank, you can consolidate high-interest debt into one lower monthly payment.
We went from 6 payments to 1.
We were able to consolidate our credit card debt into one lower monthly payment.
I was able to drop about 5 payments a month.
It's great to have money left over every month.
Even if your credit is less than perfect, call Superior Bank now at 1-888-678-7777.
Thank you, Superior.
Mortgage interest rates have been slashed to some of their lowest levels ever. The time to refinance is right now. Just call DiTech Funding at 1-800-71-FIX. Today's low 30-year fixed rate is just 6 5/8%. APR 6.877%. There are no points, no deposits, and rates will never go down to zero. So what are you waiting for?
It's smart financing from DiTech Funding.
Refinance now to a low 30-year fixed rate of just 6 5/8% with 0 points. Call 1-800-71-FIX.
The Senate is in recess for the time, the trial of the president in a short recess. They should be back in just the next few minutes. A little over an hour ago, White House counsel Charles Ruff began his presentation, and he began it by taking on the allegations and the status of his client directly.
William Jefferson Clinton is not guilty of the charges that have been preferred against him. He did not commit perjury. He did not obstruct justice. He must not be removed from office. Now, merely to say those words brings into sharp relief the fact that I and my colleagues are here today in this great chamber defending the President of the United States. For only the second time in our nation's history, the Senate is convened to try the President of the United States on articles of impeachment. There is no one who does not feel the weight of this moment.
Ruff went on to lay out a laundry list of reasons why the president's, the accusers should not have brought this case to the point that it is now, and why in any case it does not warrant removal from office. At one point, directing his comments to the House managers, the prosecutors, he said they have in essence treated these articles as empty vessels to be filled by a witch's brew of charges. Bob Franken on Capitol Hill.